Hey, friends, welcome to Her Scars Tell a Story. I'm your host, Ann Calvillo, and today I'm with a special guest, Emelissa O'Brien. Welcome, Emelissa.
Thank you, Anne.
Like, you don't even know, you're my first in person guest, and I wouldn't have it any other way. So, welcome, welcome, welcome. And I just want my listeners to know how awesome you are. You've been a friend of mine now for almost 2 years. We met at New Life Church. And I just believe that the Lord has kept our friendship and relationship growing. I admire you as a person, as a friend. You're just amazing. So I just want you tonight to just share your story with us. I know your story. It's been a blessing to me, and I really pray that it's a blessing to our listeners. So please tell us a little bit about yourself.
Thank you, Anne. You're so sweet, and it's such an honor to be your first in-person guest. Yeah, just the fact that you thought of me and my story to be worth sharing, so I'm very honored of that. Yeah, my name's Emelissa, and I guess a little bit about me is that I grew up in Honduras for 15 years, and I came to the States. Wow, I'm not good at doing math right now. But I'm guessing it's
That's
about
okay.
like 13 years that I've been in the U.S., lived in Texas, and the last 9 I've been living here in Chicago, which I've totally loved.
Mm.
And I've loved the experiences that I've been able to have. Fun fact, I did a paramedic program, so I did that for a while. And then I came and studied at Moody in Chicago and studied evangelism and discipleship at the Moody Bible Institute. And I have loved every minute about that. Yeah, in the last, like almost 5 years, I've been doing my master's in clinical mental health counseling, and I'm enjoying that. I am currently working part-time at Moody, doing my internship and taking some classes. So I am
Your schedule is busy.
yes. So yes, it is pretty busy, but moments like these make
Yeah.
it worth it. So I'm glad that I get to spend time with you. As you pursue
Thank
this
you.
podcast that I'm sure is going to bless so many. And yeah, so that's a little bit about me. Grew up in a really great Christian home with lovely Christian parents. And I have an older sister and a younger brother. They are very much dear and near to my heart. I am married to a wonderful man.
Yes. He's amazing. He's amazing.
Yeah, his name is Jonathan, and he's great. We are learning a lot as we are a interracial marriage, and that has been probably a great experience. No, not probably. Has been a great experience for me.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's been a joy. We've been married for 3.5 years. I like working with him. I support his media ministry and his media small business, and as well as he is the youth director at our current church at Armitage Baptist Church here in Chicago. And so I help out on Sunday school with the youth there. So yeah, it's been a wild ride.
Yeah. I just want to say, because of Jonathan O'Brien and his awesome skills and just his generous heart, we're able to record our episode today. So thank you, Jonathan. You're awesome for doing this.
Yes. So yeah, that's a little bit about me. I guess one thing is the last 5 years I worked at an after school program with high schoolers, and that taught me a lot about the inner city youth and just the struggles and the hurdles that they go through, but my heart just increased for them in the city. So I never thought outside of Honduras I would love a place so much, but Chicago has grown very deep into my heart, and I'm glad that I get to now call it home.
Yeah. I think one of the things that I love about you is that, your love for the youth. I know my daughter has been she's been so blessed by what you've been able to share with her, the resources and the connections that you've been able to provide for her. I just think you're amazing with kids. I just wanted to share that.
Thanks, Anne. I appreciate that.
Yeah.
And Angelina's great. She's an encouragement to me, just what she's doing with her life at such a young age. I'm really encouraged even to continue pursuing the Lord, and because she's pursuing the Lord wholeheartedly.
Yeah. And so what I want to talk about, and this was one of the things that we kind of touched on before this interview was one of the things that have stood out to me about your life is that you came as an immigrant and you've had all these hurdles. Can you tell us a little bit about what that looked like?
Yeah. I came to this country when I was around 15 years old, and my parents didn't really know English. I am privileged. I came through a visa and all of that, so I know that even within my story, I have privilege. However, it wasn't easy. There has been, I would say, the last about 12 years, I became a green card holder for the first time last year. Praise God for that.
Yes.
But
so awesome.
yeah, but every year, to be honest, since I came to this country, was a hurdle to go through. Like, if anybody's an immigrant that's listening to it, they probably can resonate. Like, trying to find a good lawyer to represent us was really hard. So I know what it's like to be taken advantage of and people messing up with my paperwork, which led to many hurdles where, we trying to stay in statuses so we wouldn't be sent back. So we could stay in this country was always an uphill battle, to be honest. And my family, when I turned 21, I was not longer allowed to be under my parents' visas. So that led to other issues of me trying to get my student visa, and that was a miracle in itself. I remember going to school not knowing what was going to happen to me. And I remember going back for the first time to Honduras in 2015, and I was told that I couldn't get my visa unless I had this X, Y, and Z things that were unheard of. And it felt really unfair. But the Lord, he really came through. He orchestrated several miracles that even when I went back to the consulate and I presented the documents that they were asking, they were shocked that I would even get these type of documents because they are unheard of, like I said. And they couldn't deny it, so they let me come to the States. And then I get to the airport and they're accusing me of X, Y, and Z, of like being overstaying here in the U.S. illegally and all these things. By the grace of God, he led me to, I always traveled with all my documents, so I was able to prove that I have never stayed illegally in this country. But that left a little of a bitter taste in my mouth of my experience with the U.S. It's just been a constant struggle of feeling questioned all the time, who I am, why I'm here, being accused of things that I've never done. And it just breaks my heart because my family and I planted churches in Texas, and we worked with a lot of undocumented immigrants. And it just broke my heart, how they're treated. And if I'm treated poorly, as I have maintain legal statuses, I can only imagine and I can hear the stories of how they're treated. And I just think that breaks my heart because we are made in the image of God. So no matter who we are and whether we're here documented or undocumented, we are to respect and love one another, especially I would say in the body of Christ. And that fueled me. My experience as an immigrant has fueled me to work with immigrant communities and especially the Latino community. Like I mentioned earlier, my parents didn't speak English. And so I watched my parents work so hard to learn the language. I would watch them work so hard to try to provide for us in this country and try to make ways for me and my siblings to go to school and get what we needed. And I just, it's hard for me not to look at current immigrants and looking at their family dynamics and not think of my family and what we went through. Even with a legal status, it's always been a little difficult. And even, like I said, I'm a resident now. And even to think of going through citizenship, it's kind of scary. But I know my God, he's been faithful. He's provided. He's shown me that he is for me. He's not against me. That he owns this world.
Yeah.
And I do not need to fear what happens to me. Because at the end of the day, this country is not my promised land.
That is so good, Emelissa. You're right. You are right. We're just sojourners, right? We're just traveling through.
Yeah.
And what did that do to your faith?
Definitely confidence. I think when I think of my God, and I think I got the opportunity to travel a couple times outside the U.S. And obviously I came from Honduras, so I know what it's life outside of this country. I realized like there's so much beauty no matter where I go, and he goes with me, and there's faithful, beautiful believers wherever I go. So the family of God is big, and though I want to stay close to my family, it doesn't mean that I am without a family. Even being in Chicago, my husband and I don't have any family around us, like blood family. Mm-hmm. But then we have a lovely family of Christ, like you and Omar and your kids and people in our church. And all the places that I've been to, I've never lacked a family of God coming around me and supporting me. So it made it less scary. It made it like, you know what, God, even if I were not to stay in this country, because there's been a lot of times where that would have been the case, he reminds me that he's prepped the way no matter what, even if it feels unfair, even if I'm treated unfairly, even if it doesn't make sense. There's peace knowing that even if I don't know where I'm going, he knows where he's taking me.
And so I know that you come from a home where you guys were very tight-knit. You guys were a very close family. Then coming to the States, and then you came alone, right? You went to school. Tell us how it felt to leave the only family you knew.
So my family stayed in Texas, and I was coming to Chicago. To be honest, part of me was excited because I'm like, I get to travel, I get to see a little bit. But there is the feeling of like things happening at home and I can't be there to help out. My parents were planting a church, an immigrant church, and it needed a lot of help. And to leave that was really hard. We worked together really well. We were basically the staff of the church. We all played a role. But it was beautiful. I enjoyed it a lot, and I enjoyed my family. It's definitely still hard to not be around, but I don't know. I think, like I mentioned earlier, like coming to Chicago was a God-ordained thing. Like there's so many hurdles, financial hurdles for me not to be at Moody Bible Institute. I remember looking at the bill, and I was like, well, I don't have the money, Lord. And somehow I still to this day cannot, I look back and I'm like, how did it happen? I am not sure. But I know there are faithful believers who got involved, who helped me, and my family in their prayers. And so when I came, the Lord just opened doors for me that made it give me peace that even if I'm far away, God is with me. And his peace does surpass all understanding. And it gave me a beautiful community where I could grow and process, I would say, even. Like leaving home also allowed me, give me space, the process of having left Honduras and then coming to this country and just, you know, you hit the ground running and I kept running and running and running. And then I came to Chicago and it was like these amazing people who were intentional with international students like me who just understood things that of my experience, and they gave language for that I didn't have before. And I could grieve having left both my family and my country, and just feeling very much like a sojourner. And we talk about it in church a lot, but it really doesn't feel good. Like I think sometimes we romanticize it a lot. And I remember just the deepest longing of my heart is some sort of stability in my life.
Right.
And he did provide it to a certain degree, just enough. I would say the manna of the day, just enough to get me going. And when I wanted to quit, my lovely father always had ways to encourage me. And he would always tell me, Emelissa, whatever you start, you finish, because the Lord is that way. Everything he starts, he fulfills. And everything he promises, he will continue to fulfill. And so that was, I think, the many times I heard my dad say that to me, it was very encouraging because I wanted to give up so many times, just fly back home and not face the issues that I had to face. But like that's definitely been a comfort to me that he will provide the grace that I need to continue the race that he has before me.
So I know your story, and when you mention your father's words, they light up your eyes. Literally, I can see that light that comes through your eyes when you talk about him. Tell us a little bit about your relationship with your dad.
Yeah. And Anne already knows this. Every time I talk about my dad, I probably
Yeah.
tear up. It's both a
Yeah.
joy and hard for me. Um, yeah, my father is, well, he passed away about 5 years ago in 2017, right after I graduated from Moody for my undergrad degree. He and I had a very special relationship. I would say he was not perfect at all. Definitely had his temper,
Right.
and like he was human. But he loved God fiercely, and for some reason, God just united our hearts really well. I felt understood and seen by him, and I remember coming home and being completely emotional for absolutely, I have no idea why. But I was like really young, coming back from like kindergarten, and I would just be crying. And my dad would just pick me up, and then he will kind of yell at me a little bit, like, stop crying. But then he'll like tender up and just be like, like he'll just be like, watch the leaves with me. And we would watch the leaves sway, and we would, until I calmed down, and he would just assure me of his love for me and the love that God had for me. And yeah, so he was, even before he like disciplined me, he would be like, it's like, this hurts me more than you think. Like, just telling me about why he has to do it, quoting scripture. He's telling me a whole sermon and just reminding me. And then after he spanked me, he'll be like, you know what? I love you so much. Like, he would just make sure I always knew how loved I was by him. So it's hard not to grow fond of somebody who just poured out so much into my life. He shared the Lord with me, and in due time, the Lord used him to bring me to God. I remember one specific night when I dealt with a lot of suicidal ideation, and I was around 14 years old when I decided I didn't want to live anymore. And then one night I was thinking, this is it. And his kind of like my dad's voice came to my head basically. And my dad, every time he shared the gospel, he would say, take out the word world and put your name in it. So I remember saying that night, for God so loved Emelissa that he gave his one and only son, that if Emelissa believes in him, she shall not perish but have everlasting life. And yeah, that stuck with me. And that night I gave my life to Christ. So in many ways, my dad has been the one that brought me to the Lord, even if it took years later. But yeah, we worked together a lot. And when we came to this country, I translated for him. And he's the reason when I went to Moody, he was always saying, invest in knowing the word of God. You don't need to make money out of it, but you can invest your life. He had studied theology as well in Guatemala, and so I knew firsthand how it enriched my dad's life, and he wanted everybody to have that opportunity. And so he encouraged me to do that. And he's also the reason why I'm studying my master's right now, because he saw things in me I couldn't see in myself. He had just tender ways to talk to me, but also the rough things that I needed to hear. I remember being at Moody and just struggling with doubt and confused by theological terms and big words that I didn't understand. And he would just knew how to keep me like grounded in what I did believe. Even if I was questioning things, he's like, go back to what you do believe.
Right.
Yeah. So and then later on, I graduated, and then my dad was diagnosed with cancer. He had a liver tumor, then diagnosed with cancer, and died shortly after that. But I can say this, like, I have never met somebody who lived with such intense integrity and passion for the Lord. Yeah. Like, the man that he was preaching was also the man at home. He showed me how to be honest with God. He had lost his mom when he was like 4 years old. And he questioned God a lot for not growing up with a mother. And he would share the story of, you know what? One day, God doesn't need our forgiveness. But I just felt like I needed to release God from this grudge that I have against him. And so God doesn't need our forgiveness, but I have forgiven God for taking my mother. And all those things he taught me, I'm seeing, I'm reaping the benefits. He's still like all the things that he taught me. I didn't make sense at the time, but I'm looking like last 5 years is just been his way of still discipling me, of still showing me Jesus, because that you can be honest with God, that you can be vulnerable with God, that you can not be afraid to show him your wounds. And he's more than willing to heal and form those scars that you may not forget because they're visible. But that's for his glory. Mm. And I think my dad was very good about letting me once in a while see his scars. But when he did show them to me, I remember confessing to him about being suicidal and him sharing about his own path. And it just, vulnerability is so necessary. He showed me what it's like to be vulnerable, and he showed me what it's like to lead with honesty, integrity, and passion for God. He would not speak ill about anybody. He feared the Lord, but loved him as a friend as well. And that's such a hard balance to figure it out. But that man could sip coffee and be chatting with the Lord like nobody's business. He'll be like at 3 a.m. Yeah. I'm like, Dad, what you doing? He's like, I'm chatting with the Lord.
Yes.
Let me be. I was like,
those 3 a.m. calls from the Lord are the sweetest.
Yeah.
When it's just you and him, and you know that it's him tugging on your heart, that it's him telling you, come spend time with me. And your dad just seems like a man that, like you said, even though he had his imperfections, one thing that he did have was a love for God.
Deep love for God.
He had a deep love for God and a reverence of him. I think that one thing that I've learned over the years, that it's okay to question God, that it's okay to ask him questions, to share your heart, to be honest with him, because he knows all these things. Yeah. And he's just waiting for us, like a father waits for his child to come and talk to him. Yeah. And one of the things that I love when you share your story about your dad is that you had that relationship with your father, that you can just, go to Dad. I didn't have that relationship with my father, so that's why I admire your relationship with your father. And I know I shared with you a couple weeks ago that, I see that relationship my daughter has with my husband. And I thank the Lord that they have that relationship. I thank God that you got to experience that relationship with your father, because not all of us have that opportunity to. Yeah. But God comes in and he says, I'm the father to the fatherless. Amen. When your father's absent in your life for so long, God shows you, I'm your father. I'm your daddy. You can come to me. And so that's why your relationship with your father was just something that I really am grateful and thankful, Emelissa, because I know it draws up emotion. But I'm grateful that you shared that, because I know there's a lot of women who haven't experienced that. And I know there's women who have. And I think it makes us appreciate the fathers that have been able to speak into our lives, who have been able to encourage us and be there for us. And he's left this legacy in your life.
Very,
and
very
I see it.
Yeah.
I see it. Even when you just, the God-given wisdom that he's given you, when you share about, well, my dad would say this, I'm like, it sounds like you. It sounds like you. I know it's the same Holy Spirit, but it's just beautiful to see that relationship with your father. So I guess the next thing I wanted to talk to you about was basically, I know that you've worked with youth, and I know, as we mentioned before, you have a heart for youth. What would you like to see happen with the youth of this generation? Like, what would you like to see happen? Because I know you've seen all the struggles and everything that this generation is going through.
Yeah, I don't know if I have a specific vision for them. I think what I see is a lot of youth who very much need connection. Somebody to come alongside them and say, I see you. And I actually hear you. Like, I think as adults, we need to shut up a lot of times and just hear and listen to the words, listen to the heartbeat behind the words.
Mm.
What is happening? What do they need? And oftentimes, in a world with a lot of virtualness, like where there's just a lot of phone and a lot of struggles that they go through in schools, questions of identity, even in counseling as I'm studying right now, like they just need a space that they feel safe, that they feel heard, they feel seen. And I do absolutely want them to know the God that I believe in, which is a God who sees them just as they are, is not expecting them to be perfect, wants to embrace them, wants to show them the real love that he has, like the love that he gave through his son by dying on the cross.
Yeah.
That he already lived the perfect life so that we could be accepted before God, that they can surrender and to know, like, I think they're very aware of their imperfections. So just be like, you know what, there's mercy and there's grace and it's full. You don't have to be anything else in front of God. And so what I long for, even the youth that I worked with, is to know that peace and to know that grace. But to truly, for I think adults, to take time to spend with them. I would love for parents to, like I love what you and Omar do with your children, just truly pouring in, because as a youth worker, I can only do so much.
Yeah.
Church and in the community, who truly impacts them is their parents. So if you're a listener, like, I implore you, listen to your child, even if they're saying things that you may be appalled at. A lot of times there's a lot of shame that they're going through and they're hiding behind it.
Yeah.
They feel like they're suffocating. And if, whether you're Christian parents and your kid is struggling with things that you know the Bible goes against, like, give them the space to talk about it, to not have to hide it and feel like they have to have a double face at church. And if you're not a Christian and you have a kid who's you're struggling with, like, don't be afraid of asking for help. I think they're worth it. And one thing I appreciate is people like Angelina, your daughter, who are standing up and sharing about Jesus in the hard places, which is their school. And I am encouraged by even youth in my own church who are saying, you know what, like, I know this love of God, and I want my classmates to know the love of God.
Yes.
Even when the classmates reject it, because right now the Christians, unfortunately, are not seen as the most loving people.
That's right. Yep.
But what I'm seeing in the students is that they truly love people because they know the love of God, and they're willing to be rejected, to be made fun of. And I just think of them and I'm like, wow. They're so courageous. So why am I holding back? So I see that in the youth. I see this bright light. And I say this, I think for me as an adult, I'm like, I just want to go around that. I want to support them. I want them to know that I believe in what God is leading them into. And I believe in who they are. And I want them to know the depth of the God's love, even as they go through the hardships.
Yes. And I think that, the Lord uses those hardships to show our children that he's with them, that it's him that's giving them that courage, that it's him who's making them bold in this culture at this time. I just wanted to kind of backtrack to when you said, I love what you and Omar are doing with your children. Let me just say this, and I have to say it. When my kids were little, my Moses was this just very adventurous little boy, and he still is. But he got into some stuff. He always got into trouble, this little guy. So I remember we were at church, and, the assistant pastors, they saw the trouble that we had with Moses, and they made a very kind suggestion that we go and we take parenting classes. Well, Omar came from the hood and I came from the hood, and we came from dysfunctional families. And one of the things that when they suggested that we do that, I was like, yeah, because I knew the home that I came from. And I wanted to do better for my kids. When Omar got word of it, he was like, are we doing something wrong? He was a little offended by that. But then when we really thought about it, I said, we need to make sure our kids' home looks different. And we don't know what that looks like. We just know what we've been through. And so I think this would be helpful for us. So we got back to the pastors and we were like, yes, we'll do it. And let me tell you, this was like, I can't remember if it was like a 6-month course, but it was a long course. During that time, Omar and I learned a lot of learning, a lot of unlearning, a lot of things that, even going back and revisiting our childhood. And like you said, going back to those wounds, but learning that even in the midst of going through everything we went through in our childhood, we can learn to make a new family home. It would look like a different structure in our home than what we came from. And so we invested that time. We invested in our family. And life with children, life with now young adults, it's a constant investment. And we're constantly learning as a family because they go through so many seasons and just transition. And so I can't take the credit for parenting. All I could say is I thank God that he put the right people, the right resources, that he gave us the strength to, go through the whole process. Our kids were little when we went through this, so it was dragging. Mind you, the church was in Indiana, so it was about an hour, a little over an hour. And I mean, we really invested in this because I believed that we wanted our home to look different. And so that took work and it took change. Yeah. And I think the hardest thing is unlearning things. Unlearning bad habits, unlearning cycles, unlearning destructive patterns in our lives. And so by the grace of God, Omar and I are not perfect parents. I would never say that. But we are parents that are constantly learning and growing with our children as they learn and grow. Yeah. Having that grace for them, right? Yeah. And so for me, when parents ask for advice, one of the things that I like to let them know is, first of all, there's grace for you right now. Amen. There is grace for you right now. And we just need to learn and just hear from God and what he's trying to teach us through whatever season we're going through with our child. Yeah. Because each one is so different and each one has different needs and each one has different callings. Yeah. And it's being sensitive to them and sensitive to their hearts and mainly knowing that it's never too late to plant a seed in your son or daughter's life. It's never too late.
And one of the things that I'm learning even more in our counseling program is how connections with parents, that relationship can be a protective factor in their lives. Yes. Because I experienced that. My dad, kind of like you and Omar, like my dad didn't grow up with a mom. His sister stepped up. He didn't have this like super close relationship with his father either. And so one of the things that I love about my father is that he became that godly man. And God showed him how to be. That hard work is the reason why I always feel like God protected me from even so much, including like, dying by suicide. And even as I dealt with shame and guilt and doubt, it's that relationship with my dad that God used to protect me and continues to use even as I live without him. And one of the things that I love that you and Omar are working on that. And I can say wholeheartedly that no matter what, like that is not to be taken for granted, that hard work does pay off. Like it's not like X, Y, and Z. Like 1 + 2 = 3. Right. It's not that easy. No, it's not linear, but it is. I think research shows that relationship with parents, you're showing positivity to your child, encouraging them, And coupled with the people around them and the community also encourage them, like, hi, like that is a good way for them. It acts as a factor that protects them from all these other things that they're already going through. They're going to be hit with hard things anyway, right? Yep. But if that relationship can act as a buffer, as a cushion,
yes,
for them to land softly on, to know that they are not alone, to know that they're seen, that they're loved. Like, we are made to be in relationship. When God made us, he's in a relationship with himself, which is a Trinity, right? And he wanted to have a relationship with us, so he made us. From the beginning, we were made to be in connection with God and with others, and said it's not good for man to be alone, so he made Eve. And then they had families, right? We're always meant to be in connections with others. And my husband often says, like, we hurt in community and we heal in community.
That is good.
Yeah.
That is so good. I mean, now that you mentioned your husband, tell us the one thing about Jonathan. And I know you're going to say there's so much, but tell us that one thing that you adore about Jonathan, like that you say, yes, this is why I married this man, Lord.
I'm not sure if I can say one thing, but I do remember when I finally decided that, you know what, I kind of want to be in a relationship, and slowly the Lord opened my heart to that. I was not a person who wanted to get married. I planned to be just somehow a grandma.
Just somehow.
Yes. If I could skip everything else and I'd just be a grandma. That was my goal. But God changed my heart. I remember he is definitely crazier than me. I can be pretty crazy, but he was way crazier. But what I loved about him was the way he loves people. And when I was around him, I could feel like I could just be myself. I don't have to pretend. And he does that with others, that he just has a good way of seeing the good in them and encouraging that. And he is solid when it comes to the Lord. What he knows, he practices. And he has a very pure heart. He has a big desire to love God and to love others well. And I've been the recipient of that. And I've seen him behind the scenes. And I remember working with him. We had this, groups of people that we worked with, and we had to work a lot together. And that's how we became friends. And I just loved how he never put others down in our conversation with him. He was not gossiping. He hates drama. He treated the sisters in Christ really well, including myself, with a lot of respect. And he sought to honor people, yet also be goofy.
Yeah.
Not too strict.
Yeah.
So I think, very much like his heart for others. Even as we're like super busy right now, and I'm like, you know what, maybe we shouldn't throw a party for Thanksgiving. He's like, okay, but I really want to have other people, invite those who don't have families like us.
He's such a people person.
He really is.
He loves people.
I thought I was a people person, but he takes a trophy. So he's always just, I am very blessed to know somebody that I think one of the things that I loved in our friendship and grew in admiration for him was that. And then also I felt safe. And I don't remember feeling that. Like with anybody else. And I just felt in my heart when I could see into his eyes, like my mom always says, the eyes are the windows to the soul.
Yeah, that's true.
And I could see light, and I could see life. I could see passion. And I could stand behind that. Yeah. I could stand behind that.
How did Jonathan compliment you?
Oh my gosh, he compliments it every day. Like compliment as a compliment, or
so how they say that our mate doesn't complete us. They compliment us. So how does he compliment you?
Definitely, I'm somebody who can be very insecure, and he just, not a single day goes by without him encouraging me or saying things about me that I fail to see in myself. He is, I would say, I can sit with my emotions for a long time. I can, especially with grief, I can just be at the bottom of the ocean and make a home there.
Yeah.
And I'm perfectly fine with that.
Mm-hmm.
But he just has a way to bring me up and allow me to see that I can still play above the water, that I can still be in the shore, that I can, and then when I need to go down, I can go down. Well, I think he's definitely is a person who just loves to live life fully, and he is active.
Yeah.
So he does bring that out. But another part is he has a very special way of sharing God's truth in simple, easy ways. And I love when he teaches the youth. I see that a lot. He just knows how to take hard terms, complex ideas into simple ways that anybody can hear. And I think that also explains his life. He's not trying to solve world hunger and everything around him. But what little he can do, he will do.
Yeah, he does.
And is very practical. And I love that. I really think that's a very special, and he has a way. Like, he does us complimenting. I'm terrible with like keeping up with things. And he has kept up. He's lived in different countries and different places. And he somehow has kept every friendship from all these places. So yeah, he shows me that he encourages me to keep that connection even with my people at home in Honduras and like Texas, and like it's just encouraging. He champions relationships really well.
Yes, I can totally see that
so
about him.
I think that's, I don't know, we're very similar. We value the same things. How we go about it is different, but he shows me that it can be simplified. He's really good at emotions, I would say. Like, he always tells me, keep the big things big and the small things small.
Yes. That's a quote. Yes.
He always comes, I would say he compliments me in that. God has used him a lot. I can easily become bitter about things, but he helps me see things with more perspective.
That's so good too. I can relate. That's really Omar, the same. Like, in my insecurities, he's the one that comes and he just speaks life to me, and he speaks truth to me. And he knows that, when I'm stuck in a rut, especially in like emotional rut, he's like, babe, you're spending too much time there. He's like, it's okay. He's like, you've processed it long enough, but I think you need to really think about the Lord and what he's been doing and be grateful. And then he motivates me, and then he'll say something like, I believe in you. Yeah. And I believe the Lord has something great for you. And that just, those words, because my love language is words of affirmation. So those words just hit home. He hits home. And I thank the Lord for him, because Omar's not a man of many words, but when he speaks, it hits home. Yeah. And I'm like, Lord, you know what I needed to hear, and you said it through my husband. And I love that. That about him, And so with that being said, you've been married how many years to Jonathan?
3 and more than a half years. So we're all going to hit 4 years in January.
Okay.
Yeah.
Okay. And so like, what are your plans now, or where are you at now on your journey?
In our marriage?
Yeah.
Yeah, it's actually a very busy season for us. But I definitely, especially on my end, because I'm trying to finish my last year at school. Yeah. So where we're at right now is he is my rock in encouraging me and supporting me. Yeah. Because I try to get across that finish line. So this degree is very much his as well. Yeah. But yeah, I think right now we are both serving at our church, and we really love our church. Serving with the youth, serving with leaders, and we're enjoying just being married. And like, I know eventually we want to have kids, but like right now we're just enjoying each other's company. And really, I think we have had to learn to truly make time for us and see as very important in our week, which can be easily taken away because we love people so much. But yeah, I think when it comes to our marriage, this has been a really sweet season. We've been encouraging each other to follow the Lord. For me is through finishing my master's degree. And then for him is, he is both a youth leader and works for a company for film. He also has his small business that I work with as well, our brand film. And that's a way to bless others, bless missionaries, bless anybody that we can. I don't really know what specifically our journey is going to look like afterward, but it's been a sweet journey of a lot. We've had a lot of highs and lows since we got married. We went through unemployment to immigration issues to like all the things, a lot of health issues. But I think one of those things we always look back on each other and we're like, man, we can, it's kind of like, I don't know what you call that in English, the thing that kids play that goes up and down.
The seesaw?
Like a seesaw. Like when
I
I'm down,
those.
he's up. And then sometimes we're both down. But then we together, we come back up and we keep that dance going. And it's been a sweet, I think, strengthening of our marriage to go through these hard things because we've seen each other's character just be sanctified and be sharpened. And we looked at even this right before coming here. I was like, we were talking about how we're grateful for each other and just being able to encourage one another when we want to give up, when we don't want to pursue what God has laid in our hearts. So I guess that's what I hope that we're going to continue doing in the next coming years.
I totally see you guys doing that. And I know like a couple of weeks ago, you had mentioned about your little weekend vacations. And I thought that is so beautiful. Like, take as many of those as possible, because that changes when you have kids, and not that it is different, but now it's family. Your children come with you, so enjoy your time right now that you have. It's just you and him, and loving each other, growing together. That's special. Yeah, that really is special, and I'm glad you're enjoying this season. There's a lot to learn and there's a lot to grow from with marriage, as you know, and it's constant. It's like a continual growth. It's a continual investing into. I see that with my own marriage, but I'm thankful to the Lord that he allows us to go through these, like you said, the seesaw, the ups and the downs together, because I believe that's what forges our marriage. That's what strengthens our marriage, because we get to know this person that the Lord entrusted to us, to love and care for, to cherish until death do us part, So thank you for sharing that. And I guess one last question, Emelissa, before we end our interview, which has been amazing. What last words would you have for a young woman who may be right now in a season like yourself, like going to school, juggling marriage, juggling life? Like, what words of encouragement would you leave for that woman?
Let me take a second to think about that.
Yeah.
I think when you're juggling so much and you have high expectations of yourself, you're just going to constantly be disappointed. So it's important that one, assess those expectations. Are they realistic? Are they considering you as a person, as a human that has emotions, that has relationships? I think often I forget that I'm not a machine, that it's okay to be interrupted by life. So therefore, I'm not going to get those A's at times. Therefore, I'm going to sacrifice maybe a discussion post, or I'm going to sacrifice maybe step down. I had to step down from helping, step down from a former job of working with the youth, a job that I loved, so I could not forsake the important. So I would have just encouraged, like, whoever is listening to, and you're juggling a lot, to take time to, first of all, connect with, if you're a believer, connect with God. And if you're not, this is an opportunity for you to know the one who truly gives us rest. And even in the midst of chaos, I think often of the story in the Bible when the disciples are in the boat with Jesus, and Jesus is napping, taking a beautiful nap. He's just sleeping, and there's so much chaos happening. the winds and the waves are going, and like they think they're going to die, and they wake up Jesus. And in scripture says, even the wind and the waves obey him. And I think I often have to remember that with my anxiety. It's like, you know what? Even my anxiety obeys Jesus. Yes. And I would just recommend, look at yourself, consider who you are, and bring yourself to God. Our anxieties, our agendas, submit to him still. And I don't know, I would say, yeah, consider who you are. And are they realistic? Are they not? And give grace to yourself when things don't come out perfectly. Because I think self-compassion is big. You know, it's like God is compassion, looks down on us with compassion and with love. So we need to extend that to ourselves when we feel like we're failing, when we feel like we're just constantly hitting a wall. Like, what is God saying? Like, that he loves you, that he sings over you, that he delights in you, even when we don't, when we're not perfect, when we're not doing everything on the schedule like we hoped that it would go. I have found great comfort in my limitations. It doesn't feel good, but when I admit my limitations and I just open my hand and let go of things that aren't necessary for me and embrace what's important.
That was for me, my friend. Thank you for sharing that. That was definitely something I needed to hear. So thank you for that. Emelissa, thank you honestly for being my first guest, my first in-person guest here. Thank you for sharing your story. Thank you for your words of encouragement and just hope. I hope you come and visit again.
Yes, of course.
You have to come and visit again. Yeah. But thank you all for listening. Thank you that you took the time to just be here with us. And stay tuned for our next episode of Her Scars Tell a Story.